Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? The answer is deals. This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On the show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the Deal Quest podcast. Let's get started. Matt Remuzzi is the founder of CapForge, Inc., a bookkeeping and accounting firm with over 1,000 clients. Matt has been involved in hundreds of business deals, working with both buyers and sellers, as well as having bought and sold his own businesses. Matt, welcome to the Deal Quest podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Matt, listen, I've gotten to know you a little bit, and it's such good deal experience in your various iterations of business, which many of us have had as well. But before we get into that stuff and the more current stuff, I want to take you back to when you were a little kid growing up, maybe 8, 10, 12 years old. What did you want to be? Because for most folks, it's not what they're doing now, and certainly they usually don't anticipate being deal makers. So you tell me.
Right. Well, I might be the exception. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I watched my dad every day put on a jacket and a tie and go off to a job he hated. And I said, man, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to wear a jacket and tie. And I definitely don't want to go do something I hate every day. So even as a kid, I was always dreaming up these great ideas. I was going to have a t-shirt business, and then I was going to have a pet sitting business, and this and that. And, it took me until my mid-20s before I finally got myself out the door and on the road of being an entrepreneur, but it had always been in the back of my head. And honestly, it's one of those things where had I made it to, my 70s and never had my own business, it would have been a regret. I would have felt like I'd let myself down. So I always wanted to do it, but it took me a good long while to finally pull the trigger and make it happen.
Love it. So, one of these somewhat born entrepreneurs, which there are some of us of, which is very cool. What was one other question looking back? What was your first deal of any type? It could be something small when you were a kid, early in your career, whatever comes to mind. First thing you consider a deal.
So the first thing I did as a deal, the first thing I did at all as a business, right out of the MBA program, I got hired at a consulting firm, and that was small business owners. They were putting them together with venture capital and lenders. And I got super involved in that. I loved it. I loved the aspect of negotiating, of working on both sides of the table. And so the first deal that we put together was a venture capital raise for a business that was making what at the time seemed super innovative. It was a device that you could both put a DVD into and a video cassette. And, they thought, ooh, this is amazing. And it had a hard drive built in. So it was kind of like an early DVR. Yeah. So, it was this 3-way piece of electronics, and we helped them raise money. And it was, interesting to me to sit down and kind of figure out, how do we negotiate this? What do we bring to the table? And because when you're not on the money side, right, when you're on the ask side, you always feel like you're the underdog, right? They've got the money. If they say no, I'm screwed, right? Now I got to go chase more money. So it was kind of learning how to deal from not a position of power, but at least try to be on the level, right? Look, we're bringing something to the table too. We're bringing an opportunity for you to invest capital that could potentially bring you a great, return on your investment. So trying to get through that mindset and just all the different learning that was involved in that. So that was my first deal. They raised some money. It didn't end up going where as a product, but that was the first deal I was involved in where I really felt like, man, I am learning. It's like one of that expression, right? You're building the plane as you're flying it. I was learning deal making as I was doing deals.
Love it. So take us on the evolution, because I know you've had an evolution in various incarnations. A lot of it has been deal related. Just so might as well just keep going through the chronology. What did you do there? What did that lead to? Take us through.
So from the consulting side, I mean, the downside to me of consulting was that, it was very episodic, right? You might get in with a couple of good clients and get a couple of big deals going, but then as soon as those deals either fell apart or came to fruition, you're sort of back on the treadmill looking for more clients and more stuff to do. So I kind of switched gears a little bit and got involved in some online businesses, which were great. My own things, I started them, they developed into some passive income for me. And that seemed like a good thing, but I didn't want to rest on my laurels. And the way online businesses work, one day you're at the top of Google and you're killing it. And the next day you're on page 2 and it was like crickets. So I was looking around for an acquisition that I wanted to sort of hedge my bets with the online business with something I thought I should get into, something brick and mortar and something I had experience with. I had a lot of experience in the restaurant business. I'd been a general manager at a number of different places. And so I came across this catering business for sale. And I, again, used the things I'd learned. I went in, I negotiated a good price. I got an SBA loan to do the acquisition. I ended up buying this catering business. And they were very sort of, old school. They had good recipes, good food, good word of mouth, but no, online presence, no real marketing savvy, no processes and procedures in place. So I felt I could bring that to the table. And so that was my first deal where I was sort of dealing on my own behalf, right? Yeah. And I acquired that business. I grew it for 4 years, and then I ended up selling it also without using a broker. I sold it on my own, again, thinking, right or wrong, right? I can do this. I don't need to pay somebody a commission. I can work this out. So I ended up selling that. And that was a great sort of end-to-end experience to buy it, grow it, sell it, all, on my own dime and with my own everything at stake myself, no outside investors. No, I wasn't a consultant on this. It was my deal.
You were a principal for the first time.
I was it. So that was a great experience too.
Yeah. So let's take a pause there and really let's examine that deal a little bit. So you said a few things that I want to point out. One, obviously, you decided to buy it. Second of all, you went for financing, and that happened to be SBA, and that's certainly a great vehicle for folks, out there. Obviously, I mean, and during the pandemic, there were additional types of loans available and things like that. Right. But there are also some requirements to meet, and also, a personal guarantee on that loan, right? Most of the SBA, traditional SBA loans require PGs. So you really are putting yourself on the line, right? But you saw, and this is the key thing that I always want to look at, is that the deals that work best are deals where the seller is going to get fair value for what they built. However, the buyer can see the opportunity to increase value. And, so I want to just highlight, because Matt said that very quickly. He said they had solid recipes, they had good reputation, they had what, right? So he went through a mini list of like, what they had that created value, whatever he paid for it. We don't need to know the number, but he also saw what was missing in terms of the opportunity for additional value. And that's really one of the key things you want to do when you're buying a business, right? So I don't know if you want to delve into that a little more in terms of like the value they had versus the value you could add. And then, even if you want to do in percentages or order of magnitudes, again, we don't need dollar amounts in terms of what you were able to do, buy versus sell.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was a good deal to me because, one, like I said, I had experience in the restaurant business, so I wasn't scared of that. I always feel like the best business to buy is one where it's like walking into a room full of friends, right? You know people, you feel comfortable, you speak the language, you know the layout, right? There might be some things that are new, some people you haven't met yet, but it's mostly comfortable. If your deal feels like walking into a room full of strangers, they don't speak, you don't speak the language, you don't know the lay of the land, you don't know anybody there, that's a tough deal, man. You got a lot to learn really fast. You don't know who the good guys are, the bad guys are. You don't know how any of that works, right? That's a scary situation. So I felt good about it because I understood the restaurant business. And, although this was catering, it's a little bit of a different animal. It's still, fundamentally fairly similar. So I felt like I knew that. What I could see right away that they didn't do well at all. They didn't have any good processes. They didn't have any good procedures. Every day it was like a new day. It was like, everything's on fire, right? Oh my gosh, everything's a disaster. And the way it worked out was for 25 years, this place had been under one owner. He'd built a great reputation. He was a fantastic cook. He built good community referrals, and he knew all the venues and everything, right? And then he decided to retire, and he sold it to this brother and sister whose father bought the business for them in the hopes of making their relationship better, right? They didn't get along that well. Well, guess what? Running a business together doesn't foster friendship, right? They were at each other like cats and dogs. So, she was running the front office and she'd send orders back to the kitchen and he'd say, I'm not doing that, so just nuts, right? There was just no good harmony in that business. And then he was trying to do it all himself, and he was not the cook that the original guy was, and he didn't like to manage people, so he was perpetually sort of understaffed, and he just wasn't, his way to manage people was yell at them. So that doesn't get the best results, right? So I'd spent enough time in kitchens and managing restaurants to know how to manage people. So I could just see that what was holding them back was not lack of business. It was them. It was the owners themselves, this brother and sister that just didn't know what they were doing. And then the other beautiful thing from a deal perspective on this was, so I got the SBA loan where, they cover the majority and then you put in a certain amount down. I got negotiated a seller note for part of what the down was. Okay. And then because it's a catering business, right, where all the orders come up front with deposits, right? So I was going to take over as of a certain date. I was getting all the deposits that they'd been holding for all future events. Yes. Right. So the day I closed, I handed them a check for my portion of the down payment, less the seller note. And then they handed me a check right back for all the deposits. So net out of pocket, I paid 3% of the deal in cash for this thing. That was fantastic. And then over the course of 4 years, the revenue went up by about 100%. And net profit nearly doubled. So when I sold it, I had a great story to tell. I felt like I was stealing the thing, which, obviously I signed up to pay back a giant SBA loan and whatever. I was on the hook. And of course,
you had work you had to deliver, which had expenses in connection with those deposits you have. Right. So, yeah, right. But
it wasn't
in terms of that moment.
Right. In the moment, it felt like, man, I'm getting a great deal here, right. Which was fantastic. And then over the course of the 4 years that I owned it, sales went up by about 100% and profits nearly doubled as a percent. So I had a great story to tell. I was a growth story, increasing profits, increasing revenue every year, year over year, improved processes, improved systems, improved client list and referrals and everything else. So when I sold it, I was able to sell it for a very good price as well. So all in, it was a fantastic deal and a great learning experience for me where, it was my deal. I was the one behind the whole thing. I wasn't doing it as a consultant. It was all me. I had my own money, my own time and reputation on the line for it.
Are you willing to say on a percentage basis or whatever, how much more you sold it for than you bought it?
It was about double.
Fair enough. I mean, revenues and profit were about double. So, that makes sense. Although in certain businesses, you even get higher multiples as you go up. So you can do more than
right. It started, it was modest size when I bought it. And so even getting bigger, I wasn't able to get
the same multiple band. Yeah. Right. So that's great. And then obviously you also, I'm sure, pulled out some money along the way. Yeah. Right. So that's what a great story, right? 4 years, you buy your first business, you make money during the way, you get to sell it for double what you paid for it. That's great. Okay. So now you're an entrepreneur and a deal maker, done your first deal, you sold your business. What do you do now?
So the next thing I did was I got into business broker because, I had sold this business. I bought it, just on my own from a broker. And then I sold it without using a broker. And I thought, the next logical place I should do, because I was thinking at this point, this acquisition went so well. I got in at the right time. I grew it. I sold it at the right time. I should look for another business to buy. And the best place to do that would be from a broker's seat where, I can look at whatever's coming on the market. If I don't particularly want it, I can sell it and earn a commission. If I do want it, then I'm in before anybody else. And so that's what I did. I got my broker's license and, brokered 36 deals over the next several years and never found anything I wanted to buy. But again, I just learned a ton of the psychology behind buyers and sellers, what motivates them, what trips them up, how the different stages of the deal, at the very beginning of the deal, right? The seller's real cagey and the buyer's all excited. And then by the end of the deal, the seller's just saying, I don't care, give me $1 for it. I don't care. I just want it done. Right. And the buyer's going, I don't know if I want to buy this anymore. It seems like, now that we're about on the verge of me owning this thing, maybe I just want to go back to my nice, safe career, my W-2 paycheck. You just kind of seeing that evolution and knowing where you're at in the cycle and the psychology of both sides. And, when is a good time to push and when is a good time to lay back and all that kind of stuff. It was a phenomenal education in deal making. And again, working for both sides. Normally in a business sale, the broker is representing the seller and the buyer typically doesn't have their own representation. They may have an attorney to look things over or, whatever, an accountant for due diligence, but they generally don't have their own counsel and they end up relying on the broker as well for, help me understand this, help me talk to this guy, help me figure out the deal. So you really end up working with both sides pretty much throughout end to end. And it was just a great education in deals.
So it's interesting. So, you start out, right, you're doing consulting on larger, high level finance driven deals, right? Then you have your own small business, you have that experience. Then on the brokerage side, talk to me about what was it mainly in the SMB or middle market, or what was it?
It was kind of all over the place, but I mean, on the smaller end, $100,000 was like the smallest deal up to, mid 7 figures was kind of the biggest deal. And most of them were right in that low 7-figure valuation range. You're not generally dealing with management teams. You're dealing with owner operators who've gotten to a decent size, but they're still basically owner operators at heart. They're not, you're not dealing with investors and management teams for the most part. There was a couple deals, but by and large, it was sort of owner operator types of owners.
Yeah. And let's talk about that a little bit, right? Because there is a distinction in how you get deals done. When you're doing big deals, where there's management teams and, finance teams that do, whatever. And also usually at that size, the sellers are different, but the buyer's different as well, right?
Right.
And also the players involved, there's much more likely to be a broker or an investment banker involved in those bigger deals, whereas the smaller deals, you might have a broker or nothing. Yeah. So, what is let's just stick with those owner operated deals for a moment. Who are the likely buyers of of those deals, right? There are different scenarios where I've seen it, but I'd love to get your take.
Yeah. So, there's generally two kinds of buyers. There's either the people who are, maybe high level corporate guys or, people who've done well in another business and they're looking to take on something else. They may plan to grow and build into a management team, but they're basically dealing with their own funds or, borrowed funds, SBA loans, that kind of thing. That's the biggest pool, I would say, of buyers in that scenario. And then the other is, small strategic buyers who, are saying they have a business that's maybe 2 to 3 to 5 times bigger than the target. And they're saying, this is a good fit for us because it's a complementary brand or it's a space we're trying to get into, or geographically, they're in Orange County, they're looking to expand to San Diego or something. So they'll make an acquisition like that. They'll bring some of their people down to kind of run the new location or what have you. Those tend to be the two kinds of buyers in this smaller space. And then when you get up into the bigger deals, then it's, more strategic acquisitions, or it might even be private equity interest or what have you.
Financial buyers.
Different kind of buyer, different kind of deal. When people aren't playing with their own money, it's just a different level of, involvement.
Yeah. And different analyses and whatever. And, so what are, in those kind of deals, on the smaller side deals and the owner operator deals, what are some of the biggest lessons you learn? Where do deals go wrong? Where do deals not happen? Where do deals that happen, maybe they shouldn't happen? What are some of the things you would say?
Yeah, it's interesting. And one of the downsides to me of that business was a lot of deals fell apart for reasons I had zero control over.
Right.
You'd work on a deal for 3 or 4 months. You'd have everything in place, the financing, everything else. And then literally one night, I get a call at 10 o'clock the night before the deal's supposed to close. And the guy says, "Hey, Matt, I hate to tell you, but the deal's off. It turns out my wife let me know she wants a divorce. And now we're going to have to figure out assets. And it's the whole thing. I can't sell the business." Nothing I did wrong, nothing the buyer did wrong, just life event came in and just took a big dump on the deal. So,
right. And on a much larger deal, the odds of a single person's life event impacting that deal going forward or not are way, I'm not saying occasionally, but for the most part, they're slim to none. Whereas in this market, it's, Yeah, in a larger deal where there's more parties involved and there's no single point of failure like that, it's unlikely that something like that's going to really screw things up. But in these smaller deals, it can happen. I mean, another thing that can happen is just emotions get involved. I think you and I had been chatting offline about the wine deal that I did. It was an urban winery. And, these guys have been going back and forth for months, all kinds of deal points. And then, at the last minute, they had a little tasting room. And in the tasting room, there was a bunch of signs on the wall, little cutesy sayings and stuff. And, I guarantee you, right, these sellers, if I blindfolded them, they couldn't have named one thing on one of those signs, right? They hadn't looked at it in 7 years. But the guy, the buyer says, "Oh, of course, when they say I might rehang some of these," and they go, "Oh, those signs aren't part of the deal. We're not giving you those signs. We're taking them with us." And the buyer's like, "Well, I'm not buying the business if those signs aren't included." And I'm thinking that's a $20 sign you can buy at Home Goods. You're going to blow up $1 million deal on a $20 sign that neither of you really care about, but they just get all there's no way I'm giving you that sign. And if you don't give me that sign, and I'm just going, I'll buy the sign. I'll buy you new signs. Okay, please. Let's just move on. And it's just that silly stuff that, that should be a rounding error. That should be a non-issue, right? If there's $100,000 difference in what the buyer wants, the seller wants, okay, let's negotiate that. But the sign, come on. But it's just funny that people get these emotional attachments or imaginary emotional attachments to stuff. And that can torpedo deals where you have to just kind of talk everyone off the cliff. Like, okay, let's stop and think about this for a minute. Do you really care about the sign? Do you really need the signs? Let's compromise. You take 3, you keep 3. Oh my! You're thinking, and the whole time you're thinking in your head, really, this is what we're fighting about. That is interesting. And listen, any of us who do this stuff. I mean, one of my corporate associates who works on our deals just said to me this morning. He said, "Corey," and it's not the first time I've heard this. I've said it. He said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm an unlicensed therapist." That's part of what we do, right?
Absolutely.
It's unlicensed therapy to try to have people work through their issues so that they can see clearly and do a good deal if it's meant to be done, or from a clear place, not from your ego being engaged over a sign. Make a decision about a deal. So, totally. It's so different, and that rarely. I mean, listen, I guess there are definitely examples of huge deals with big CEOs with big egos where the egos get involved. But for the most part, throughout the process, they have teams that if you could make a criticism on the other side on big deals is that, it's almost too mechanical and too logical, right? It's all about the numbers. It's all about sometimes they have trouble seeing some of the intangible opportunities and values that smaller entrepreneurs see because they're just crunching, they're crunching numbers and running financials and, and counting beans, so to speak. But so very interesting.
Well, I got an example. An example on the bigger side, we had a deal where, it was a fairly large buyer acquiring a medium-sized deal. And they were talking in the conference room. And to your point about sort of being too detached, right? The guy in charge of the bigger company is kind of just running down the list and, makes the very offhanded comment of, something along the lines of, well, of course, we'll be letting the entire accounting department go. And one of the accounting department people's in the meeting going, "What do you mean let the entire account?" It's just like, he wasn't thinking, these are people, these are job careers. These are people who've been in the company for 20 years. And, of course we'll let the entire accounting department, and we could save money there. And he's just thinking, I'll save $250K in payroll. And the accounting people are like, what do you mean let the account? So you just have to stop, look around, think about what you're saying. I mean, maybe that is your plan and maybe that's logical and maybe that's what you're going to do, but kind of read the room, right? So yeah, that happens too. The other way, they're just too casual about it. And of course the guy selling feels bad. Well, I want to sell, but you're going to fire all my people. And it was not a good meeting. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, totally.
Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can invite you to a new way to determine your deal readiness. I created a fast and easy assessment that will determine exactly how deal ready you are. Once you complete the assessment, I use your responses to identify the obstacles that are holding you back from being a deal-driven growth genius. It's as easy as heading to CoreyKupfer.com/assessment. That's CoreyKupfer.com/assessment and filling out a few multiple choice questions. I'll be checking in after the episode to see what your results are. Now back to the show.
So now you do 30 some, I think you said 30 some odd deals over a few years, or 50 some, I forgot what it was. But now you decide to evolve to your next evolution. What had you decide to leave business brokering, and then what did you do from there?
One of the things that I saw in virtually every deal, and this applies to even large business deals too, but for sure the owner operator in smaller and mid-sized businesses, right? The first thing you do in any deal, in any broker situation, is you go and do a valuation, right? In the valuation, you want to say, okay, let's look at your financial statements, look at the trailing 12 months, look at the last few years, look at the tax return, see it. And over and over and over again, what I would hear was, the books. Well, yeah, there's some problems, or, we're a little behind, or, Aunt Sue's been doing it, but I'm not sure she knows what she's doing. And you go, okay, well, guys, look, I can't even put a number on this thing until we get all this cleaned up, because, that's the first thing a buyer's going to do, is want to know, well, how much is this thing worth? And we've got to hand them reliable numbers that are going to stand up for the due diligence, right? If they fall completely apart in due diligence, that's going to torpedo the whole deal, or at least, at worst, right? Or at best, you're going to get a significant renegotiation of your LOI when they find out that the numbers you were claiming are nothing close to reality. So after having had that happen 100 times, I had maybe the opportunity here, instead of buying a business, is maybe get into that small business accounting. And I kind of looked like I always do, right? As if I was going to buy a business or get into a new industry, look around. What does the competition look like? Well, the competition looked like a bunch of stodgy old CPA firms who charged a lot, who charged by the hour, who, during the whole January to May timeframe didn't do anything, right? Or you have the kind of independent one-off, Gladys and Shirley doing bookkeeping services, again, charging hourly, not being real responsive, and being very focused on just sort of the accounting. They had this very narrow tunnel vision of, I can tell you about debits and credits, but I can't really help you understand if your business is doing all right or not. So I thought, there's a great opportunity here to provide quality bookkeeping services at a higher accounting level for a reasonable fixed flat rate price with good customer service. And that's what we launched with. And 1,000 clients, later, 55 employees, the formula seems to be working. So,
well, I will tell you that it's amazing to me how many, so I've been an active member of Entrepreneurs Organization for a long time. I took a little break off for a couple of years and came back. But the point is that Entrepreneurs Organization is, 14, 15,000 members, and I don't know, 30, 40, maybe 50 some countries now, all running businesses that are $1 million and above. So it's, they're running, there's different businesses. Obviously, profit margins at that level are very different for certain businesses. But the point is, once you, considering there's only a couple of few percent of businesses that run, that are $1 million in revenue and above, you're talking about, a certain level of business. One of the most common questions on all the message boards and Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups or whatever it is does anybody have a good bookkeeper? I'm not happy with my bookkeeper. Did my, Agnes retired and now I don't know who, whatever, or, I'm not getting, and certainly, and listen, frankly, we even, I've had a quality bookkeeper, but we just actually had an outsourced CFO service because I need more sort of, forward thinking, dynamic planning stuff and whatever. But not everybody's in a position to do that. CFO services are not cheap. It's high level stuff, and it's not warranted in various businesses. But I'm amazed at how tough it is to find, and I've had that experience, good quality bookkeepers that you keep for a period of time that are reliable. And so I definitely see the opportunity in the marketplace, and obviously you've grown significantly. I mean, I can't imagine there are many firms out there that have the number of clients and the number of bookkeepers that you have. Most of them are mom and pop, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're definitely in the, fraction of 1% territory for the size we are with the bookkeeping emphasis. I mean, we do have a tax side as well, but bookkeeping is sort of our bread and butter main service. It's what we're most known for and what we tend to lead with. And yeah, I mean, like I said, most bookkeepers are one man or one woman operations that have, between 5 and 10 clients. And they're either not thinking about how to grow beyond their own skill set, or they're just not equipped to, or whatever, and there's no test like, for CPA, right? It's a pretty rigorous education you need, and you need to take the test, and then you need so many hours of practice before you can get signed off. Whereas a bookkeeper, anybody can say, I'm a bookkeeper, like literally with no qualifications whatsoever. And it seems to happen fairly often.
Right.
I've done QuickBooks for a couple of months, I'm probably a bookkeeper. Well, no, not really. But that's our competition. So as a result, it's fish in a barrel, right? It's very easy for us to come in and say, I see what you had, here's what we can offer. And they go, wow, that's fantastic. Or you didn't have anything and we can do better than that, so great. So it's been a great experience. But then as a result, a lot of our clients are thinking about an exit. And so we've helped a lot of clients from that side of the deal table. And then a lot of clients too are looking at acquisitions as a path to growth. And so again, we get involved in the due diligence, helping them scope out an acquisition and integrate it once they brought it on board. So again, it's been fun for me with my background to be in the position to assist with that and see kind of, what I can do to help add value beyond, again, just the bookkeeping, which is not as much of a commodity as you'd think. But then beyond that, being able to add additional value on the deal side has been a lot of fun.
Which is great. And then obviously, I mean, the lead up, everything we talked about is that the clients you've been working with for a while, once they go to do deals, right, they don't have that scramble to clean up. Like, they're set already on that, right? Now, obviously, you're gonna help them further, right, with the due diligence on the deal and some projections on how that's going to go. But they don't have, listen, we see the same thing on the legal side, right? We'll go in, and any smart professional, whether it's on the finance side or the legal side, whatever, is going to go in and do what I call pre-due diligence, right? We know what the buyer's going to be looking for. We're going to look for it first.
Right.
So these, the client puts their best foot forward, and we don't want the buyer to find anything. We want to find it before the buyer would find it and get ready. So, for us, that could look like, contracts that have not been renewed, right? That they just keep, going, that have expired, right? The inability to find certain key legal documents, or agreements. Regulatory, if we're in a regulated industry, we do stuff in the financial services space. There's a lot of regulated stuff, making sure they're all, clean on that. So it's a similar thing. And obviously, if they've been working with good counsel or good financial folks, then they don't have to, because that can become a scramble sometimes, right? And if they don't have to do that scramble, and they could just be like, if literally, in theory, tomorrow, now obviously, you don't want to, but in theory, tomorrow they can produce a financial statement that's reliable to a buyer. What a luxury, what a great thing that is. Then they can focus on the positive parts of trying to get a deal done.
Right. I mean, the last thing you ever want in a deal is a surprise, right? Where the buyer comes and says, hey, what about this? I found this. And how do you explain it? And you're like, I didn't know about that. Oh gosh, you never want to be in that situation, right? You want to go, of course, we've seen that, and here's the answer and the explanation, and this is why it is. And any other questions, right? You always want to find anything else you've got, right? You don't want to be like, right?
And there's really a couple of things to emphasize that. One is, obviously, you don't want to be that way because like if, for example, there is something that's off in your numbers or whatever, it could affect, you could think you're getting X deal, and now suddenly, they want to recharacterize something on the financial statements and whatever, and now it's costing you purchase price. Right. But at least as much as, I say this often, buyers, and certainly people who work for buyers, whether they're the outside professionals or if they have in-house people who are doing any kind of due diligence, they're always trained to look for anything that's wrong, because the last thing they want to do is actually have that surprise later after they close and have a problem. So the problem is, even if it's not a huge thing, if they really find something and you don't have a good, quick answer for it, on the financials, or it could be on the legal side or whatever, it starts to shake confidence in the deal, because it's well, if the smoke was the fire, like, is there any, like, oh, wait, they didn't have this one buttoned up. Are there 2 or 3 or 10 other things I don't know about that I haven't caught? Now the buyer starts getting worried, right? So you actually risk the entire deal on this stuff. Whereas if it's something they find and you have a great explanation for it, well, you still may have a negotiation. Maybe they have like I remember a deal I did with a public buy or whatever, and my clients actually had good financial statements, but the accountants for the public buyer had an accounting view on how something was categorized or characterized that was different from the position that my client's accountants took, right? And it was a legitimate discussion and dispute and whatever, and interpretation of the accounting rules, because tax and accounting is not always black and white.
There's gray areas, yeah.
And there was a legitimate disagreement, but my client had an answer for it. And even better, I've told the story in full, I won't tell it again. Even better, we knew the buyer really needed us, and we also, they were a public company, so we knew in order to meet their numbers, they needed, like, we were the only really company that in the time frame could fit it. So we were able to hold firm on that, not because their accountants were wrong, but because we knew we had leverage. But that's not always the case, right? So there's going to be legitimate, issues that may come up in terms of interpretations of accounting treatment. You don't want the ones where you're like, oops, we're wrong.
Right. Well, and that's what I tell clients too, because sometimes they'll say, well, that's just a little thing. It doesn't. But the thing is, even if it's not material to the deal, either the number is too small or whatever, it's exactly what you said, right? Once they can say, well, we found this issue, and we found this issue. Now we have no confidence. Now we just don't know how any other things are. That's could be a whole landmine, field of problems just because we haven't found it. We found these 3 and you didn't really, and even though, well, that's what's $10, but they're like, oh, mistake's a mistake. So you never want to cross that line, because it's very hard to come back. It's almost impossible to rebuild the trust. At minimum, you're going to take a hit on the price, if not lose the deal altogether. So even if it's a small thing, you got to have it tight, right? And I always tell clients too, my philosophy is, and the way we do the bookkeeping and accounting for you, and I think your philosophy as a business owner should be, look, run the thing like you're going to sell it tomorrow. Even if you never sell it, run it like you could sell it tomorrow. If there's slop, if there's miscellaneous stuff, if there's stuff you could throw out or whatever, do it, right? Don't wait. Like when people want to sell their house, right? They're scrambling around trying to paint stuff and fix the chip tile, and the garage door didn't work, and the buyers are coming. Well, fix all that stuff as you go, all along, because you never know, especially as a business owner, you might out of the blue get somebody, hey, listen, I'd be interested in buying that. And you don't want to say, well, look, it's going to take me 6 months to get this thing in shape before I can show it to you, right? You want to have it ready to go.
And the house analogy is phenomenal, because you always think, like, a lot of people do that, and then they're like, wow, this house is like better the day before we sold it than we ever lived in it. It's like, right. So like, why not have a working garage door while you were living there? Like, as opposed to whatever. And why not have a business that really is not either wasting money or you don't know your numbers or whatever. I mean, it's actually much better life whether you sell or not. But yes, if you feel you sell.
Yeah, I think that's just it's a smart way to kind of mentally have it in your mind. Look, I'm going to run this thing tight. I'm going to maximize profit. I'm going to keep it neat and organized and no slop. And then even if I never sell it, I know I'm getting the most out of it. And when I am ready to sell, I could literally on a dime put the thing on the market and be ready to go. I don't have to do all this big cleanup and fix it. And, we got to get the margins up and get a 6-month track record of better margins to like you've already been doing that, or you should already be doing
folks,
that.
I don't want to be, but you could say, hey, I'm not selling for another 10 or 15 years, but listen, we never know. I mean, I've been doing this long enough. Mm-hmm. A health issue comes up, something happens, whatever, next thing you know, you're even at more risk of losing value. And that time that it takes, like if you're under pressure to sell, because health issues are a very common, unfortunately, thing that as people sell earlier, especially in these kind of businesses, right, that are more owner operated than they anticipated. Well, the last thing you want to do is be dealing with a health issue and then having to rush to, figure out all this stuff at a time when you're probably under pressure to take, less money anyway, because if they know, you have a health issue, then, they have leverage already. So there's so many reasons to do it. Matt, so with the 1,000 clients, I'm assuming, and the way things work these days with bookkeeping, I'm guessing maybe you have more of a concentration locally, but I'm guessing you have clients all over the country. Yes.
We do. Yeah. In fact, all 50 states we hit a little while back. And then actually we've got international clients as well. I mean, predominantly people located, outside the US, but owning US entities. But sometimes, owning international entities as well, or, one of each, one in the US, one outside. So yeah, I mean, we're really geographically agnostic, which is a great place to be. And in this day and age, everybody's working remote, everybody's online and Zoom meetings and everything else. So really, there's no reason to kind of say, we're just San Diego or we're just Southern California. Wherever you need us to be, we can be there.
Right. So Matt, if people wanted to find out more about your company and what you're up to, what's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, the best place to find us is our website, capforge.com. It's got lots of information about us and me and what we do and the services we offer and some pricing info and that kind of stuff. And then if that looks interesting to you at all, feel free to reach out. Email is great, or phone call. I'm happy to talk to anybody, whether you think you could be a client or not, or you're not sure, let's have a conversation. I love meeting new people, talking to entrepreneurs. If we can help you, great. If you're not ready or it's not a fit, no problem. We'll help each other somewhere else down the road. So that's the best place.
Great. So give it again, capforge.com?
Capforge.com.
All right, perfect. And ideal client, what's the range of clients? It's in that small to medium-sized business range, or give us
Yeah, I mean, we've got everybody from startups to our biggest client was 110 million in annual revenue. But a sweet spot, I would say, is 500K to 5 million is where most of our clients fall. There's a good range from 5 million to 25 million, and a handful from under 500K. But again, if you're not sure, you're probably you're not big enough to have an in-house accountant or accounting team, but you need the help, obviously. Give us a call. If we can help, great. If not, I might have a referral for you, something else I can help you with.
Perfect. Matt, my final question on the podcast is always about my highest ideal in life, which is freedom. Mm-hmm. And for me, that means everything from freedom for all people around the world from oppression to the reason I'm an entrepreneur and haven't had a boss in decades. What does freedom mean to you, and how does it impact your life and business?
Freedom to me means really being able to decide how I spend my time. Right? Being an entrepreneur and wanting to be an entrepreneur was always, like I shared earlier, right? I didn't want to have to get up with an alarm clock and go to work and do stuff I didn't want to do, spend time helping somebody else do stuff I didn't want to help with or whatever. So to me, freedom is self-determination, right? I come in and work hard every day, but because I want to. Right. And then when I want to take off, I want to do something with the family, or, my daughter has a recital or my son has a soccer game, I can go and do that. And nobody's telling me I can't, and nobody's saying, hey, you got to stick around or you got to whatever. So to me, the freedom is self-determination. I can decide how much I work, when I work, how hard, how much I earn for my efforts, all that kind of stuff. So I'm 100% with you. That to me is the most important thing. Money is nice, but the time is the part that you don't get more of. And I want to be in control of my time.
Love it. Matt Remuzzi, thank you so much for being on the DealQuest podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. I want to invite you to a unique way to tap into the wisdom and experience of the DealQuest community. Join the DealQuest Deal Den Zoom calls, a free monthly 90-minute mastermind. In the mastermind, we address all the challenges you may be facing and help support you with the opportunities that may arise in terms of deal-driven growth. You will get input not only from me, but all the members on the call will collaborate and serve each other in a mastermind format. To sign up for the free mastermind, go to www.corykupfer.com/dealden. That's corykupfer.com/dealden. I'll see you there. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.